So, how is MicroStrategy a Ponzi scheme? This was a question that was asked in my video yesterday when I talked about MicroStrategy and how it's lost 45% of its value in just the past few weeks as MicroStrategy went from highs of $548 down to lows of $300 per share. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. And in this video, because it was asked so often and it was made a comment that there's no way that MicroStrategy is or could ever be a Ponzi scheme, I thought that this article did a very good job breaking it all down. So for all those that are watching that either own or are invested or are thinking about investing in MicroStrategy, I hope that, again, just as all the media likes to do is talk about all of the good, it's also important to talk about some of the risk of buying a stock that is extremely overbought and overvalued within a short period of time that fundamentally is not or does not do anything as a company other than buy Bitcoin and offer convertible bonds or debt. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I started making videos about MicroStrategy after I noticed that it was just pumping, and it reminded me a lot of GameStop and AMC. A lot of people that are bag holding this stock that lost 20 to 15% last week don't like when I compare MicroStrategy to GameStop. The comparison is not how the company is ran, because at least GameStop had a company. All MicroStrategy does is buys Bitcoin. It was previously a software company, and technically it still is. But that's not why it's worth $88 billion. The reason it's supposedly worth $88 billion is because it's purchased Bitcoin during this bull run, and before that, fortunately, it's paid off for Michael Saylor. Now, don't get me wrong. Michael Saylor is a very bullish guy on Bitcoin, and so far it's paid off. But this is where the Ponzi scheme starts to kind of take its form. So this was by an analyst named Jacob King that was labeled MicroStrategy Bitcoin focused business model a giant scam, claiming it's unsustainable and destined for a collapse. And again, this is just for you to understand where people are coming from when they call it a Ponzi scheme. You don't have to agree. If you're still want to be incredibly bullish on MicroStrategy, you're an adult. You don't need my permission or anyone else's permission to put your money where you see fit. Maybe MicroStrategy won't be a Ponzi scheme, right? But this is where they are coming to that conclusion. So King, a contributor of the Whale Wire newsletter, issued this critique of MicroStrategy in a detailed post on X. King argued that MicroStrategy's strategy of issuing bonds to buy Bitcoin is a giant Ponzi scheme. So he pretty much explained how MicroStrategy raises or borrows debt, right, from their investors by issuing these like convertible bonds or issuing debt at 0% interest. So this is MicroStrategy. They borrow debt from their investors and they buy Bitcoin. A lot of you guys know that because they're purchasing so much Bitcoin, MicroStrategy's stock performance is no longer how the company, the software company, because that's what MicroStrategy originally was. It was a software company. That's not what the value is now based on. That's not why it's increased or decreases in value. Its actual business model, if you look at it and what it reports in earnings, the business itself is a shit company, right? But MicroStrategy, when it issues this debt, so it borrows from its investors, it buys Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin price goes up, MicroStrategy's price technically has gone up. So you can see this, that as Bitcoin was running up in mid to late 2024 during this bull run, I want to compare the two, right? So you can see that September all the way up to November is late November is when we began to peak. If we look at BTC and we look at that same type of time frame, we could see the same thing here, right? So we could see that from, let me go on the day chart very quickly so you guys could see that. So we could see that from September all the way to late November is when we saw the huge run up from 60,000 all the way up to highs of like 90,000, almost 100,000, right? During this huge bull run, is what led to MicroStrategy having this huge rally. And then that's what really began to catch a lot of people's attention of like, wow, not only is, when Bitcoin goes up 5%, MicroStrategy doesn't go up 5%. It goes up 10, 15, maybe 20%. There was days that MicroStrategy was up 50 or 100%. It was running exponentially greater than what the underlying asset was. And this is what really threw people off. It grew so much, it became so overvalued and so overhyped that since then, since it peaked in November 21st and came crashing down, it has not been able to recover. It has a strong resistance at 460. And I've said this before. This is not to say that MicroStrategy can't recover or can't surpass 460. Anytime that I talk about shorting it, the reason I close out my short every day is because I understand that with these pump and dumps, they can pump at any given moment. And to be so naive to not take that into consideration would be a disservice for you as a trader. But a lot of investors in MicroStrategy are saying that they expect MicroStrategy to be at $600, $1,000 per share, which again, the thing that I just want to show you is that MicroStrategy itself has not been able to make new highs. Remember, it peaked on November 21st. I'm just showing you the facts. These are not opinions, as you will see in the comment sections of people getting offended when I point this out. So it peaked November 21st, which is around this time right here. There are slight corrections, right? And during this little pullback, this is what MicroStrategy experienced. This significant pullback. MicroStrategy went from highs of $548 all the way to lows of $338. It lost 38% of its value in about one trading week. I'm saying this to highlight how volatile MicroStrategy can be. But while I talk about the bad, I do believe that if for some reason some good news comes out, let's say that the US begins to adopt Bitcoin, which again, you always have to present those opportunities out there. I then do believe that Bitcoin will skyrocket, and then also it can act as a positive catalyst for MicroStrategy. But the thing that I want to show you is that because of how much it's sold off, you could see that it has not returned to previous highs. It has not made new highs. But if you go back to Bitcoin, from the highs that we made on November 21st, that was 99,000. We surpassed 99,000. We hit 104, then we hit 108. But what's going on now? Why is MicroStrategy no longer pumping? MicroStrategy pumped, but then it only went to 450. And then it only went again to 450 per share, right? Support at around 350, resistance right around 450. So again, there begins to be discrepancies. MicroStrategy has begun to lose its hype. It is no longer trading at the exponential multiple of whatever Bitcoin's price action is. And it's because it grew too fast, too quick. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. You can see that if MicroStrategy was so incredibly bullish, just like Bitcoin, then it would have made new highs. But that's not the case. It's already outperformed and outgrown truly what Bitcoin's performance is. And the issue with this is, well, if you look at how the Ponzi scheme works, MicroStrategy issues debt, right? They borrow debt at 0% interest from their investors. They buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price historically has gone up as they buy more Bitcoin, right? Because as they begin to buy more Bitcoin, demand for Bitcoin goes up and they buy billions of dollars at a time, right? So therefore MicroStrategy, so as Bitcoin's price goes up, you would think that MicroStrategy's price goes up. Great. MicroStrategy increases in market cap, and as they increase in market cap, it allows them to then now be able to issue more debt for them to be able to borrow against. So then they go back, MicroStrategy, right, uses that equity again to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price goes up, MicroStrategy's price goes up, market cap goes up, and then again, as market cap continues to go up, technically speaking, if it does, that means that MicroStrategy would need to grow in value. MicroStrategy can issue more debt to then be able to buy more Bitcoin. And repeat, that is where the Ponzi scheme works. When there is no actual value that is, happening. All it is that you're asking to borrow money from your investors by issuing debt. You use that money to buy Bitcoin, And in that, you hope that Bitcoin's price continues to go up, and you hope that your market cap price continues to go up. So then you are worth more. So then now you can borrow more and repeat the whole process again, right? You buy Bitcoin, you hope that your price goes up, you borrow against your value, you buy more Bitcoin, you repeat the process. I'm just explaining to you. You do not need to agree. But this is where people are getting the idea that MicroStrategy is a Ponzi scheme. So the higher values allow the company to raise more capital, enabling further Bitcoin purchases. King warned that this entire cycle depends on Bitcoin's price continuing to rise. Now, that is like not an opinion, it is a fact. We all know and we've seen that if Bitcoin's price comes crashing down, MicroStrategy will come crashing down. And that's the part that's really scaring MicroStrategy investors. And please do your own due diligence. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to comments. Look at what these different articles are saying. And there's reasons that investors are getting weary of Michael Saylor. And don't get me wrong, Michael Saylor is staying his course, right? He is doing exactly what he said he was going to do from the beginning, and that's aggressively buy Bitcoin, and he wants to hold it for 20 plus years. I don't have anything against Michael Saylor. He's been very open about what he wants to do, and he seems to be obsessive about Bitcoin. The issue with this is that when you become overly leveraged and buy too much at these extremely, overbought levels, all-time highs, Bitcoin historically speaking, again, I'm not sharing an opinion with you. I am not. I am sharing a fact with you. So again, understand the difference. This is not I hope Bitcoin comes crashing down or because it's never happened before. Bitcoin always crashes at least 50% from previous all-time highs every single time. Dating back since 2000, we could even, this one only goes back to 2018, right? This was the push in 2017 and the correction. But we could use our little trend line tool here, and from highs of whatever we made here, almost 20,000, and how we corrected, that was an 80% pullback. I'm just showing you, right? And the reason I'm showing you this is because we all know that if Bitcoin comes crashing down in any way, MicroStrategy will, in my opinion, be a multiple of that. If Bitcoin drops 10%, I think MicroStrategy will drop 20 to 30%. It is what happens with extremely hyped up stocks. Their moves become just multiples of whatever they're based off of. Again, the previous run to highs of nearly 13, not as big, and the correction down to 67. And then finally we ran all the way up, right? We ran all the way up to 69,000. We pulled back all the way down to 16 to 17,000, a 75% sell-off. Again, that was just back in 2020. We found a support. We've shot up. Now, as you can see, it's beginning to show slight signs of a resistance. So if we technically speak based off of previous all-time highs and on the minimum, you saw that there was all of them exceeded at least a 50% drop. So that means that if we expect a 50% drop, that would be right around 53,000 per coin. And that's on the low end, right? Because all the other pullbacks have been more than 50%. So again, this is not an opinion. This is a fact based off of what has happened in its past. It's not that it has to happen because nothing has to repeat itself. I'm just showing you that it is a pattern within Bitcoin. Do you guys know what MicroStrategy's average purchase price is for Bitcoin? It's right around 61,000. And I just showed you that if Bitcoin from all-time highs, as of right now, pulls back 50%, minimum 50%, because all the other ones have been more, it would put Bitcoin at 53,000 per coin, putting MicroStrategy in the red. Now, all I want to highlight is this comparison that they had. So the analyst went further into suggesting that MicroStrategy's collapse could surpass financial scandals such as FTX. Do you guys remember that? The brokerage or company that became too overly leveraged, mismanaged funds, and lost the $30 billion valuation, right? MicroStrategy has consistently defended its Bitcoin-centric strategy, arguing that it provides long-term value for shareholders. Now, this is where, again, I like to talk about the positive for MicroStrategy. I do believe Michael Saylor believes like himself that he thinks Bitcoin is the holy grail. I truly do believe that. But it doesn't matter what he believes, right? Like that might be his intention and he's super obsessive about it and that's great for him, but he's issuing debt on other investors' money to then borrow that debt and then buy Bitcoin. And when it does come crashing down, if it does, right? Because Bitcoin's price has to correct itself, I can reassure you, those investors, like they were during the bull run, are not going to be as giving as they are during a bear run. It's just not how it works. It happens every single time. Everything looks great during a bull run, and as soon as things begin to turn around, then everyone turns against you. I don't think Michael Saylor is technically doing anything bad in his eyes because he's expressed that he has no intention of selling Bitcoin anytime soon. And that sounds great when Bitcoin's bullish for investors. It gets investors excited, but investors sometimes are very short-sighted in that sense. Because investors, when they end up seeing Bitcoin pull back and maybe MicroStrategy is in the red, they might just think, well, you see, you were too aggressive, and that's where the disagreements might come about. Again, you can decide whatever it is that you might think, but I just wanted to shed some light on why people call MicroStrategy a Ponzi scheme, and it's because of how they run their business. You will see people say, oh, you haven't done enough due diligence or research on this company. MicroStrategy as a company, the software company, or that when you Google search it of what it is, the business sucks. Look at it. Look at their financials. They suck. When it comes down to what MicroStrategy does, they buy Bitcoin. That's all they do. So please don't overcomplicate it. Michael Saylor is simply a guy that found a creative way to be able to use his publicly traded company to be able to issue debt, to borrow that money to buy Bitcoin. And so far it's paid off during this bull run. But just like we saw last week, and just like many of you guys saw if you're invested in MicroStrategy, I'm sure a handful of you guys got margin called because MicroStrategy, in the way that it's sold off, right? There's a bunch of people on different social media platforms that were talking about getting margin called because you get FOMO, you buy into the hype, and then once demand and hype begins to fade, you end up losing money, right? And if you're down 30%, the brokerage that you're trading with starts to send you margin calls, meaning that, hey, you borrowed more money than what you have, and now you're down on that money. We want that money back. And then now you have to cover that margin call. And that is the unfortunate truth of what I see to be happening with MicroStrategy. If it continues to sell off with Bitcoin, then we'll only see more selling pressure, not because people necessarily want to sell MicroStrategy, but because they will have to, because they were overly leveraged at overbought levels, just like Michael Saylor. So I'm excited to follow up. Do I think that MicroStrategy has to come crashing down right away? No. Do I think MicroStrategy can pump up before it comes crashing down? Of course. I've gone long on MicroStrategy as a day trade. I would never invest in MicroStrategy at these price levels. It is too risky in my eyes. If you look at profit potential versus risk potential, it is not a safe play. But again, my risk tolerance is not yours. You don't need my approval. I simply wanted to make this video to showcase and highlight where people are getting the idea that MicroStrategy is a short-lived Ponzi scheme that has been able to excel and be added to the NASDAQ 100 because of this crypto bull run. But just like SMCI, this was also another comment. People were saying, how can you say that MicroStrategy is worthless when it just got added to NASDAQ 100? This just shows me that you're not very well versed with the market. Getting added to the NASDAQ 100 means that you meet specific prerequisites. SMCI met those prerequisites. SMCI got added to the NASDAQ 100 back in July of 2024, just a few months ago. When MicroStrategy got added, SMCI got removed. Do you want to see why? And again, this is not an opinion. This is a fact. SMCI also was incredibly bullish, but then it was found and being investigated for accounting fraud. And because of how quickly it pumped up, feel free to go back to the videos that I've made. I made a video when SMCI pumped up to highs of 122 before it was 1,200 because it did its reverse stock split, and then it came crashing down. Being added to the NASDAQ 100 doesn't determine the success of a company. It simply means that it met certain prerequisites for a period of time. And as soon as it begins to no longer meet those prerequisites, then it will get removed, adding to further selling pressure. That is all, right? Again, not an opinion, it's a fact. So please, you can't just always be focused on the good news. You also have to be aware of the bad news and what is going against you, because I would rather be someone that is prepared than to be surprised. Just like you can see by my bias in this video, I do believe that MicroStrategy will come crashing down, but I am not naive enough to think that it has to do it now and that it can't pump up more before it actually does sell off. There needs to be a trigger to crash Bitcoin and drop it below 90,000 and send it free falling. And we don't have that trigger yet. So I'm not going to pretend to think that MicroStrategy will do that now. I'm just expressing beforehand so we are not surprised when it does happen. That is all this video is about. So again, if you get offended, that's your own fault. If you're upset because I'm making these videos, I promise you I will only make more because I love how much it irritates those that don't like to accept the truth of what is happening. If MicroStrategy was such a successful company, it would have not gone from $548 down to $300 in just a few weeks, losing 44% of its value. It is incredibly overhyped up. You might not think it's a Ponzi scheme, and that's, your opinion, but you cannot be surprised that some people are just calling it out for what they think it is because of how incredibly risky it is for others. Your risk tolerance is not others. Their risk tolerance are not yours. It's just, again, there's a lot of different ways on how to make money in this market. And I hope that even if you are bullish on MicroStrategy, I hope that when it does, and if it does pump up, you do your part in taking profits when it makes sense to you. I want to see you guys all win, right? Me making money shorting it doesn't take away from you going long on it, because I've gone long on it as well. My job is to show up, and depending on price action for that given day, to pay attention to that and to decide, do I want to go long and do I want to go short? I've shorted and gone long on MicroStrategy many times within my live trading sessions, but I close them out every day because I understand the risk with MicroStrategy. It's an incredibly risky and volatile stock, and this video is, again, to express that to beginners that are trying to be convinced that they need to invest all of their money at these levels for MicroStrategy because it's going to be the holy grail. Again, I hope that this video shed some light. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. I hope that it earned your thumbs up. And if not, don't worry. I can see all the people in the comment section that get offended. And I just want to ask you one thing. How much money did you lose last week bag holding MicroStrategy? We had one of our most successful trading weeks last week, and that's because we shorted MicroStrategy, we shorted Tesla, and we shorted PLTR within given days. Again, I recap my trades every day. I go live every day. And if you ever want to tune on in, I go live every single day at Market Open with our LPP team. It's the second link in the description down below, and you can join for as little as $1 a day. So whenever it is that you feel like you are ready, second link down below, and I'll see you tomorrow at Market Open for our live session. Like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take care, team.